Salve, we are continuing now to talk about this huge turba, this huge crowd, and Vergil has two similes here that compare the crowd successively to falling leaves in a forest and also to birds that are gathering in a flock and migrating. Quam multin silvis autumni frigore primo, lapsa cadunt folia aut ad terram gurgita balto, quam multae glomerantur aves, ubi frigidus annus, transportum fugat aeteris immitit apricis. The quam here and here signal our similes. Quam multa, as many as. As many as the leaves in the forests, and lapsa having slipped, fall. So our subject is folia. Multa also modifies it, and lapsa modifies it. So those are all nominative in form. As many as the leaves in the forests, having slipped, fall. Now that's the verb right there. Cadunt is our verb. Cadunt, from cado, cadere. And we have a couple other descriptors in this sentence. We already had in silvis, so that's an ablative of place where. And now we have an ablative of time, frigore primo, in the first cold, or think the first frost when leaves are falling. And he even gives the season, autumni, that's a genitive, of autumn. So this is when all the leaves are falling off the trees, and it is fall because winter is coming. When, as many as the leaves, having slipped, fall in the forests at the first frost of autumn. So these are ablative of time, this is ablative of place. Remember, ablative always asks, always answers, I should say, the question why, or it could answer when, where, these kind of questions, or how, and it tells us these adverbial type things, when, how, where things happen. So we have ablative of place and ablative of time. Lapsa, it comes from the verb labor, labi, lapsus, and so it's a deponent, perfect deponent participle. It's in the past, having, so we use that having in our translation, having slipped. But we translate it active, even though normally it would be it has a passive form. We translate it active because it's a deponent verb. So labor, labi, very important verb there. Folia also is neuter plural, and that's why it ends in a, but it's plural. Cadunt is plural, and all these are also neuter plural because they modify folia. A single leaf would be a folium, and folia, plural. It's a second declension. So that's our first simile. This crowd is like falling leaves. Think of the masses of leaves that fall from trees in a forest. Well, that's what this crowd is like. It's masses of falling leaves. Aut ad terram gurgite ab alto, quam multae glomerantur aves. So our second simile here, we have this one simile of the leaves. Now out, or, we have a second simile, also signaled with the quam multae, or as many birds. So our new subject is birds here. As many birds, and those go together. As many birds from alto gurgite, this is ablative, from a deep whirlpool, and then ad terram, to the land, Glomerantur. Are gathered. So this word are gathered. Or as many, or just as many birds are gathered from a deep whirlpool to the land. What does that mean? The idea is the birds are flying from the ocean, from a deep whirlpool, to land. These birds are migrating and they're stopping at various places on land as they go to rest. Let me translate that one more time. Or as many as there are birds that are gathered, it's passive, that are gathered from the deep whirlpool to the land. Ubi, when the frigidus annus, when the cold year, literally, or cold season, when the cold season, and this is a subject here, when the cold season, notice it's nominative case, when the cold season fugat, puts them to flight. This is an important distinction to make here because you have fugio, which is I flee, and then you have fugare, and fugare means to put to flight. So this is fugare, first declension. Fugio, fugare is a third io. And the idea is in fugio, fugare, the person who says fugio, they're the ones fleeing. But in fugo, you make somebody else flee. I put to flight, or I make someone flee. So this cold season is making the birds flee because they don't want to be in the cold. They want to go to a warmer climate. So when the cold season puts to flight, and you got to understand these birds that are the object, the understood object here, the birds, aves, transportum, across the sea. And another verb here for the cold season, and it emitted, and it sends them to terris aprikis, sunny lands, to sunny lands. And these are datives, and they're datives because emitted takes the dative. Emitted is a compound verb of mitto. It's in mitto. And a lot of times compound verbs happen to take the dative for their objects. It's very common to see that. So one more time. When the cold season puts these birds to flight across the sea and sends them to warm lands. Apricus could also be translated as sunny or sun-loving, if you look at Farr's his definitions on the page. He gives you a couple there. I like these similes. I think they're very vivid pictures, and they're actually a lot, especially ending on this sunny. I mean, we've been talking about the underworld and this horrible crowd or this very ragged-looking crowd of dead that's gathering at the river Acheron, and then he compares them first to the falling leaves. Maybe that gives us an idea of their number. You can't really count the leaves in the forest, so there's so many they can't be counted. And then this idea of the birds. Really, the birds are going to a better place. So some people have thought maybe the aprikis here, maybe this is hinting at Elysium, the sunny fields of Elysium that await fallen warriors and things like that in the underworld. Some places in the underworld are happier than others. For people who lived better lives, they have a better, more sunny, perhaps, home waiting for them in the underworld. So let me do the whole thing in translation one last time before we move on. As many as leaves, having slipped, fall in the forests at the first frost of autumn, or the first cold of autumn, or as many birds as are gathered to the land from the deep whirlpool. When the cold season puts these birds to flight, across the sea and sends them to sunny lands.